If you think you know someone after 2 years of marriage, wait until you find keys that lead you to a door you never knew existed. Stick around until the end and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I noticed it on a Tuesday night, the way Joan angled her phone toward her chest the second I walked into the kitchen. Not a quick glance down like she was checking the time. A deliberate, practiced move. Like she had been doing it for a while and I just finally caught the angle right. My name is Marcus. I was 36 years old, living in a split level outside of Clarksville, Tennessee, and I had been married to Joan for barely 2 years. 2 years. That was supposed to be the easy part, the part where everything is still figuring itself out. Instead, I was standing in my own kitchen watching my wife treat her phone like state secrets. She said she was going to Gloria's on Wednesday. Then she said fitness class. Then Gloria again. Each excuse came out clean, like she had rehearsed it walking to the bathroom. I didn't push, not yet. I filed it away. The receipt showed up on my nightstand about a week later. A men's suit accessories store downtown. One dark red tie with a thin silver pattern. I picked it up, turned it over, read it twice. Joan had no reason to be buying men's ties. I set it back down. The next morning it was gone. I told myself there had to be a normal explanation. Then that excuse stopped working. I only found the keys because I was looking for the spare socket wrench I kept on the back shelf of the garage. They were taped behind a loose bracket, low enough to reach without a step stool. 2 keys on a plain ring. No label, no tag. Just sitting there like they belonged. I held them in my palm for a long moment. Then I put them in my jacket pocket and went inside for dinner. Dad called that Thursday and said he was taking Dylan and me to dinner. Just the 3 of us, he said. Russo's Steakhouse, the one off Ridgeway Road that he had been going to since before I was born. I said fine. Dylan said fine. Neither of us asked why. We sat in a corner booth. Dad ordered the ribeye and waited until the bread came before he said anything real. Then he put both hands flat on the table and told us he had been thinking about the business and the properties. He said Dylan would stay in charge of the building supply operation because Dylan had been working inside it full-time for years. I would keep the share Mom had left me in the company, but I would not run it. And I would get Mom's house, Abigail's house. I didn't argue. I didn't feel cheated. I knew enough about the business to read a balance sheet, handle suppliers, and spot when numbers did not add up. But Dylan had made it his whole identity. That house on Cypress Lane was the only place I could still feel my mother in the walls, in the smell of the back porch in summer, in the way the kitchen light hit the floor in the late afternoon. Money couldn't buy that. Dylan could have the daily control if that was what Dad wanted. But Dylan couldn't leave it alone. He was wearing a new tie. Dark red, thin silver pattern running diagonal. The exact same tie from that receipt. My jaw tightened. I looked at my water glass and breathed through my nose. Outside in the parking lot, Dylan buttoned his jacket and said he already knew about the arrangement. Then he smiled and said Dad had always felt a little sorry for me. Like the house was a consolation prize for a man who couldn't handle more. He didn't say it mean. He said it easy, like a fact. That was worse. I got in my truck and drove home without answering him. The next morning, while Joan was in the shower, I took the keys from my jacket and dropped them in my coat pocket. I kissed her on the cheek when she came down, told her I had some errands to run, and left. I drove to Gloria's townhouse on the east side of town, the one Joan had pointed out to me once after a neighborhood cookout. I parked at the curb and tried the keys in Gloria's front door lock before I knocked. Neither one came close to fitting. The lock cylinder didn't even budge. I stood there for a second, then rang the bell. Gloria answered in a bathrobe with a cup of coffee and a surprised face. She was friendly, told me to come in. I sat at her kitchen counter and she poured me a cup without asking, because that's just how Gloria was. We talked about the neighborhood for a minute, nothing serious. Then I asked how the movie night with Joan went last week. Gloria set her mug down slowly. She looked at me the way people look at you when they're deciding whether to say the real thing or the safe thing. She chose real. She said she hadn't seen Joan since last month. She said she had texted her twice about getting together and Joan had left both messages on read. She looked sorry about it, like she didn't want to be the one telling me. I thanked her for the coffee, said it was good to see her, and walked back to my truck. I sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. I pulled the keys out of my pocket and looked at them again. Now I knew what they were for, I just didn't know the address yet. That Saturday I let Joan leave first. I gave her a 10-minute head start, then then I pulled out and followed from a distance, staying back 2 car lengths through the surface streets. She drove east, then cut south past the old pharmacy on Delmar that had been closed since the spring. Behind it sat a 4-story brick building, the kind that had been converted from something industrial, with metal window frames and a painted-over loading door on the ground floor. Joan parked in the side lot. I pulled to the curb half a block back and watched her walk to a side entrance and take the stairs. 2nd floor. She didn't look around. She moved like she owned the place, like she had done it 100 times. I waited 3 minutes, then went in behind her. The hallway smelled like paint and old wood. I heard nothing through the walls. I found the apartment by the shoes. Dylan's brown dress shoes, the ones I had seen him wear to every family dinner for 3 years, were lined up against the wall just outside the door, with his overcoat folded on top of them. The door wasn't fully latched. A strip of clear tape had been pressed near the strike plate, like somebody had meant to keep it from locking while they carried things in. I pushed it open. Joan spun around from the kitchen counter. Dylan was sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, and he didn't even stand up. For a second he looked startled. Then he settled back into his chair and looked at me like I was a delivery he had been expecting. On the table I saw 2 mugs, a motel card, a lease renewal envelope with Joan's initials on it, and a stack of papers with my name typed at the top. Draft statements, it looked like. Notes about memory lapses, dates with blank spaces, incidents I didn't recognize, and a rough plan to challenge whether I could handle Mom's house or my company share. And beside the stack, a handwritten note on yellowed paper in a script that made my chest lock up. It looked like my mother's handwriting. Abigail's handwriting. The note said I was unstable, that my memory couldn't be trusted. I stood in the doorway and didn't move. Joan didn't look embarrassed. She looked irritated, like I had interrupted something she had a right to be doing. She crossed her arms and said my memory slips had made it impossible to have a real conversation with me anymore. Said it like she had practiced it. Said it like it was a diagnosis. Dylan leaned back in his chair and said I had been forgetting things again. He said it calm, almost gentle, like he was concerned. He nodded at the papers on the table like they were evidence I should take seriously. And for one awful second, the missing receipt flashed in my mind. The tie that disappeared, the keys I almost didn't find. I hated that he had built a trail I couldn't fully close. I looked at Joan and asked her straight who wrote that note. She said it didn't matter who wrote it. She said I had been paranoid for months, that I picked fights over nothing, and that she had been covering for me to protect my dignity. Then she called me small. She said I was jealous of Dylan because he had always been the one who made things happen, and that I was easy to replace. That last one she said quietly. Not cruel, just flat. Final enough that I felt it in my ribs. I picked up the handwritten note from the table, folded it once, and put it in my jacket pocket. I didn't say anything to either of them. Dylan started to say something else, but I was already at the door. I walked down the stairs and out through the side entrance and got in my truck and drove. My hands were steady on the wheel. That surprised me. I thought I would be shaking. Instead, I felt like something had just become very simple. I ended up at a diner on Route 9 that I used to go to alone before I met Joan. I sat in a booth by the window and ordered coffee I didn't drink. I stared at the glass of water the waitress left and thought about the note in my pocket. The handwriting looked right. The loops on the capital letters, the way the A's were shaped. It looked enough like Abigail's script to rattle me, and whoever wrote it knew that. I drove to Dad's house an hour later. He was on the back porch with the radio on low. I sat down across from him and told him everything. The keys, the apartment, the papers with my name on them, Joan's speech, Dylan in that chair with his shoes lined up at the door. I told him about the note and what it said. I took it out of my pocket and put it on the table between us. Dad looked at it for a long time without touching it. Then he said a wife has no reason to keep a secret apartment with her husband's brother. He said it once, flat, and didn't come back to it. Then he went inside and came back with a box of recipe cards. Abigail's old recipe box, the one she kept in the kitchen drawer her whole life. He opened it and held a card next to the note. The handwriting didn't match. The loops were wrong. The pressure on the pen was different. It was close, but it was a copy. He told me Dylan had borrowed that recipe box 3 weeks earlier. Said he needed something for a dinner he was supposedly making. Dad had thought nothing of it at the time. Now he said he was keeping the card, calling his attorney, and having the note looked at by someone who dealt with questioned handwriting. He set the card down and looked at me steady. He didn't apologize for Dylan. He just looked at me like he was deciding what to do next, and I could tell the decision was already made. Dad called Sunday dinner for that following week. He made it sound routine, told Joan and Dylan separately that he wanted the family together. Neither of them had any reason to suspect anything. They showed up at 6, dressed like it was normal, and sat down at the table like they hadn't built a paper case designed to make me look unhinged. Dinner was quiet. Joan complimented the pot roast. Dylan talked about a contractor issue at one of the business sites. Dad listened and nodded and refilled everyone's water. After dessert, Dad set his fork down, folded his napkin, and said he had something to share. He said he had been on the phone with his attorney twice that week. He said he had looked at some things carefully and decided to revise his arrangements while the paperwork was still under his control. Dylan was being removed from management that night and would no longer have signing authority at the building supply business. I would step in with Dad's attorney and the company accountant during the transition, and Abigail's house would stay designated for me as originally planned. Dylan's share of the business had been restructured to a minor equity stake with no management authority. Dylan went white. Not pale, white, the way a person looks when every plan in his head breaks at once. Joan stared at the tablecloth. She didn't speak. She didn't look at Dylan or at me. She just sat there with her hands in her lap like she was trying to remember how to breathe. Dad said he appreciated everyone coming and that he was tired, which was his way of ending a conversation forever. 2 days later, Joan called me while I was walking through Abigail's house with a measuring tape and a notepad. I saw her name on the screen. I let myself feel one sharp beat of satisfaction. Then I answered. She started crying before she said a full sentence. She said Dylan had gone quiet on her, the apartment lease was in her name, and she never meant for the papers to go that far. I laughed once, short and clean, told her all future contact could go through my attorney, and hung up. I sold every piece of furniture Joan had picked out, donated the rest. I kept Abigail's kitchen table, her recipe box, and the way the afternoon light still fell across that old linoleum floor. My attorney filed the separation papers. Dad's handwriting examiner gave him what he needed. Dylan was out of daily operations before the contractor tore out the first cabinet. I hired that contractor by the end of the month, and I started over in the only place that had ever been fully mine. Do you think I handled this the right way, or would you have done something different? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story hit, like and subscribe.